Hi everybody, it's Double B Billy Boudreaux back here on WGS-TV. Gonna do a little retro wrestling review. It's something I'm gonna start doing again, or probably more of, because I know on one retro review I did WCW Bash at the Beach, or Beach Blast 1993. So on this retro wrestling review, I'm gonna take it back to Starrcade 1999 for WCW. Now I honestly believe that 1999 might have been the year when WCW was starting to lose control on reality, in a sense. And, you know, it kind of reflects in some of the matches that they did on Starrcade that year. And not all of the matches, but there were quite a few matches that, you know, when you kind of sit down and you kind of take a look at it, you kind of wonder, you know, what the hell were they thinking when they booked this match? So let me go ahead and get started on here. The first match is Disco Inferno and Lash Leroux, he's a Cajun, taking on Big Vito and Johnny the Bull with Tony Marinara in their corner. I think Tony Marinara is Tony Mamaluke from the FBI in ECW. He kind of looks like him. I'm not too sure or positive on that, so don't quote me on that. But I honestly believe that's Tony Mamaluke. Oh, anyway, in this storyline, apparently Disco Inferno had borrowed $25,000 from the Marinara family and never paid them back, and so they had their hired goons, Johnny the Bull and Big Vito. This is before he started wrestling in a dress in WWE, and they had to take him out. And the only friend that Disco Inferno had at the time was Lash Leroux. Lash Leroux didn't owe any money to the Marinara family, and so we wanted to help him out. It was an interesting tag match. It was good to see a match where Big Vito wasn't wearing a dress, where had to be put over by wearing a dress to make himself into a, get himself on TV and whatnot. So that was good. Johnny the Bull, I think his name was Johnny Stamboli. I am not positive on that, but it's a shame that his career really didn't pan out. I know he had an extremely short stint in the WWE with Big Vito. Big Vito apparently was got more over on the crowd, as the old saying is, than Johnny the Bull. So I think that's probably why they probably let him go. But anyway, back to this match. It was a good match. They were really putting over Disco Inferno and Lash Leroux as the faces of the excuse me, here as the. I just gotta move a couple of things around. I apologize. But anyway, let me put that over here. All right. Now back to what I was saying. I'm gonna pick that up, by the way. Don't worry about that. I'm not a slob. Anyway, they're really putting over Disco Inferno and Lash Leroux as the faces of the company, and they were really talking about, all the times that Johnny the Bull and Big Vito were messing up when it comes to extracting their revenge on Disco Inferno for not paying the Marinara family the $25,000 that he owed him. And well, it really didn't pan out this time, because Disco Inferno, with his back turned, thought that it was Big Vito behind him and hit his version of the Stone Cold Stunner. It was called the Chart Buster. I remember that. I think it was like around my neck's bugging me a little bit. Around 1997 when he was calling it the Chart Buster, and in this match they called it the Last Dance. So apparently it got renamed. But he hit the Last Dance on Lash Leroux mistakenly. Then Big Vito hits that big DDT, that big leaping DDT, and gets the win. And the next thing you know, they put Disco Inferno in a body bag, and they carried him to the back. And then when they got him to the back, they unzipped the body bag, they take him out, they put him in the back of a car, and they speed away. I don't really remember how the storyline progresses from there, but I'm just telling you what I saw on the Starrcade that was on WWE Classics on Demand, which is really why I love this. I love WWE Classics on Demand. You get to see all kinds of great stuff. Now, but this is what I was alluding to earlier about the fact that WCW was kind of losing grip on reality on this one. Now, I have nothing but respect for women's wrestler by the name of Madusa, aka Alundra Blaze, when she was in the WWF. But it was her and Evan Karigias for the Cruiserweight title, and I just really think that maybe WCW saw what they were doing with Chris Jericho and Chyna with the Intercontinental title. I'm not sure, but apparently they thought they could probably pull off the same thing with Madusa and Evan Karigias. And like I said, I have nothing but respect for Madusa. She's an accomplished women's wrestler, but she's a woman's wrestler. That's what it is. She's a woman's wrestler. She doesn't belong. I don't want to sound sexist when I say this, but on paper, when you look at it, it's kind of ridiculous. Madusa and Evan Karigias. Well, you guys can probably think back at the time that Chyna and Chris Jericho was kind of ridiculous, but Chyna's a whole different story. But Madusa and Evan Karigias, putting the Cruiserweight title on Madusa, I really don't know. Technically, she kind of fits into the category, but you kind of look at, Cruiserweight enthusiasts such as myself who wants to see that kind of style wrestling come back to American TV, like Monday Night Raw and TNA and stuff like that. It's kind of almost a slap in the face, saying like, haha, we don't give a crap about Cruiserweight wrestling anymore, so we're going to put it on a woman. I don't want it to sound sexist like that, but it's kind of what they did. It's kind of what they did. They, like I said, Madusa is an accomplished women's wrestler. She's won many titles all around the world. She was one of the mainstays during the time when the WWF first introduced the women, or brought back rather, the women's title, because it used to be back in the 80s and the early 90s when they had the women's championship, and then it just went defunct for years. But anyway, that's kind of what happened. Madusa and Evan Karigias storyline was, Evan Karigias and Madusa were kind of, boyfriend and girlfriend, and then something like that. And Evan Karigias started flirting with Spice of the Nitro Girls, and they were hot. And apparently it was all Leroux, because during the match, Spice punches Evan Karigias right in the dick, and then Madusa gives that German suplex that she's known for, and gets the win, and becomes a Cruiserweight champion. One of my favorite personalities from WCW was, of course, the hardcore champion at the time, Screaming Norman Smiley. You want to talk about a dude that just screamed character. He just, when it comes to entertaining the crowd just from him screaming in fear, there's nobody else better than Norman Smiley. And I'm still saying it to this day. This dude was just so full of, character and emotion and charisma. I say charisma because the dude can, he plays to the crowd. Everybody wants to see him, screaming in fear from somebody, and the dude delivered. And especially when he had to defend his hardcore title against Meng. Now, I don't really remember the storyline at the time when, Fit Finlay was doing his hardcore boot camp, but apparently Brian Knobbs was in it, and they interfered in the match, which ended up backstage, which is something we don't really see in wrestling nowadays anymore, is backstage brawls. And of course, with the hardcore rules, falls count anywhere. So they interfered on Meng, and Fit Finlay hits him with a pipe and knocks Meng out. And then Norman Smiley, who was hiding under a table, yes, you heard me right, hiding, gets up and pins Meng, and then immediately heads for the exit. Next up, we had a match. It featured the Revolution, which consisted of Shane Douglas, the leader, who had a brace on his left elbow, and he's, one of the things that really killed his career was that the injury he suffered to his elbow, especially in ECW in 1997 when he won his title back from Bam Bam Bigelow. He had to have extensive elbow surgery on that left elbow, and then when I saw him coming out with that brace, that just kind of told me that, the injury to his elbow was nagging him even more, and this was probably around, At the time, you had to have maybe even more extensive elbow surgery. It was only 2 years after his elbow surgery, guys. Only 2 years after his elbow surgery, and he was coming out still wearing that brace. You could kind of tell how bad his elbow was. I mean, I kind of feel bad for the guy. He had to, go through that. I'm surprised he was able to have his run in TNA for as long as he did. But the Revolution consisted of Shane Douglas, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and apparently WCW's answer to China in the form of Asia. They were going to take on Hacksaw Jim Duggan and surprise tag team partners of his choosing. And the stipulation was, if Hacksaw and his mystery partners defeated the Revolution, then they would have to, at the time Hacksaw was kind of the janitor/wrestler of WCW from the powers that be. Vince Russo kind of makes me want to vomit in my mouth every time I mention Vince Russo's name. But that's the kind of way they were going at the time. So if Hacksaw, and his team beat the Revolution would have to take over the janitorial duties of Hacksaw for the next 30 days. However, if the Revolution would beat Hacksaw and his mystery partners, then the very next night on Nitro, Hacksaw Jim Duggan would have to denounce the American flag and denounce his citizenship. Well, it turns out his mystery tag team partners, believe it or not, was the Varsity Club. If you're not familiar with the Varsity Club, it consisted of Kevin Sullivan, Rick Steiner, and Mike Rotundo. And this is when they debuted their cheerleader, Leia Meow. She looked good in that cheerleader outfit. I'm only going to say this. Then she goes on to become the manager of the Young Dragons in 2000. But anyway, throughout the match, Hacksaw would not tag in his partners, and as soon as the advantage was going to the Revolution, by all the double teaming, the Varsity Club comes in, clears the ring of the Revolution, and then what happens next is the Varsity Club turns on Hacksaw and beats him down to a pulp. Then Shane Douglas, who was on commentary, by the way, because of his elbow, sneaks in, and apparently, technically, he was part of the match, pins Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and so now the stipulation stands that the next night on Nitro, Hacksaw had to denounce the American flag. Next up, we had Vampiro and Dr. Death Steve Williams, accompanied by WCW's Insult. You heard me right. I said insult to Jim Ross by the name of Oklahoma. And the stipulation was, if Vampiro defeated Dr. Death Steve Williams, then Vampiro would get a 5-minute match with Oklahoma. Needless to say, the Vampiro, being the leader of the group, the Misfits, wanted to make sure that Oklahoma did not run out of his agreement on the match and had him stuck in a steel cage throughout the entire match. Now, Dr. Death Steve Williams ends up getting himself intentionally disqualified when he pushes down the referee at one point when he had Vampiro down. So Vampiro got 5 minutes with Oklahoma. Oklahoma started to gain the advantage on Vampiro, but then the Misfits came in. I don't know what was WCW thinking. I really, as far as that insult getting beat up, I really don't have an issue with that, the character being beat up. But it kind of lacks logic if you think about it. So Vampiro ends up getting the win over Oklahoma. Then we had another thing that lacked logic was this match. I mean, how can you have a 6-man tag to determine the number 1 contenders for the tag team titles? It really doesn't make any sense. I mean, that's an entirely new gap in logic. You have a 6-man to determine your new number 1 contenders for your tag team, which consists of 2 people. I really don't understand why they did that. Although back in the day, they really did have 6-man tag team champions. If you don't believe me, look it up. But it was Creative Control, a.k.a. the Harris Brothers, a.k.a. DOA, a.k.a. Jacob Eli Blue, a.k.a. I don't really remember what of the gimmicks they had. And Curt Hennig taking on. It was really scheduled to be Booker T and Stevie Ray of Harlem Heat, but Stevie Ray had a problem with the female whose name was Midnight, who I've never seen again after WCW, to be honest with you. And Midnight was ripped. She was tough. She was kind of like China and Asia combined. But it just turned into be a handicap match. Stevie Ray came out and distracted Midnight. Booker T ends up getting double teamed by Creative Control, and the Creative Control ends up getting the win for their team, making them the #1 contenders. And apparently this was another split of Harlem Heat they were doing. Then we had the Bunkhouse Brawl match. For those of you, think back to the shoot promo Dustin Rhodes did when he came out with the 7 gimmick. He was pissed off about that. A lot of people were, I for one included. So they had a Bunkhouse Brawl match between Jeff Jarrett and Dustin Rhodes. That kind of went all over the place. Saw the cowbell being used. You saw 2x4s being used. You saw the guitar being used, which evidently led to Dustin Rhodes' downfall, especially with the fact that Curt Hennig was down there at ringside as well, and he ultimately interfered in the match repeatedly. With it being a Bunkhouse Brawl, nothing the referee can do. And Jeff Jarrett gets the win after he clocks Dustin Rhodes with the guitar from by jumping off a ladder. Then we had what was scheduled to be a crowbar on a pole match, DDP and David Flair. Now earlier in the night, David Flair, who really should not even be should have been in the wrestling business, but thanks to his daddy, he was there. He received a golden crowbar from a mystery person who ultimately turns out to be Daphne, who makes her appearance later on in the evening, later on in the match. The way the match started, David Flair ran out of nowhere when DDP was making his entrance into the ring and clocked him with that golden crowbar. Referee takes it from him. Then, 90% of the match it was David Flair, putting it to DDP, and then in just 3 seconds, DDP hits the diamond cutter after David Flair grabs the crowbar from the pole and hits the diamond cutter. Next thing you know, 1, 2, 3, DDP is the winner, but, he still wasn't done there. He puts him on the top rope and gives him the diamond death cutter. Then he was going to do to David Flair what he did to Ric Flair and take him out of the business, I guess, by hitting him in the nuts with a crowbar. Because that's the way it was looking. It was either that or maybe the knee, but he never really connected with where he was going, because that's when Daphne made her appearance, lays on top of David Flair to protect him from any preceding shot he was going to get. Sting versus Lex Luger for Miss Elizabeth's contract. 90% of this match, they refer to Lex Luger as the total package. Throughout his career, he's been known as the total package Lex Luger, and they called him Luger and stuff like that. But apparently, this gimmick, this incarnation of Lex Luger was, 90% he was called the total package as a heel. And apparently, it was because of his mistreatment of Miss Elizabeth that Sting wanted this match for her contract. And it ultimately turns out to be a swerve. Elizabeth. Sting gave Elizabeth a can of mace. She was kind of known at the time for carrying a can of mace. Sting gives her what he called high-octane version of it, and it turns out to be silly string, because Elizabeth tried to mace Sting, and silly string came out. And then at one point during the match, Sting was put in the Scorpion Deathlock on Lex Luger, the total package, and Elizabeth comes in and clocks Sting with the back, knocking him unconscious, which then leads to her putting a steel chair on the unconscious Sting's right forearm and hand, and Lex Luger proceeds to stomp on the chair and then takes the bat to his arm, and the next thing you know, Sting is being carried out. We had the Masters of the Powerbomb match, Kevin Nash and Sid Vicious. This one screamed controversy because during the match, the referee was knocked down, and Jeff Jarrett comes out, clocks Sid Vicious with a guitar. And then Kevin Nash tries to the only way to win the match was to powerbomb your opponent. Kevin Nash couldn't get him up, so he lays him down and kind of pulls a Guerrero. Then it picks the referee up, revives him, and tells him, "Hey, I just powerbombed the dude." Referee believes him, declares the match over. What else can I say? Then the main event of the match was Bret Hart defending the World Heavyweight title, the WCW World Heavyweight title, against Goldberg, and a no disqualification. There must be a winner match. And this was what was to be Bret Hart's final match in WCW because of the concussion he suffers from a thrust kick that Goldberg gives him in this very match. And at one point, the referee gets knocked down. Roddy Piper comes in, dressed in a referee shirt, comes in, calls for the bell, takes the title belt, starts walking out with it. Bret Hart follows him, and then demanding what's going on, and Roddy Piper shoves the title belt in Bret Hart's face, and then walks off. Basically, with the match, their main event match that had so much hype on it, they ended it with a no contest. So, I kind of hope you guys enjoyed this little, retrospective look and review of WCW Starrcade. You can kind of tell, what I was talking about at the beginning of this video, where WCW was kind of starting to lose focus on what was making them so good during 96 and 98. 1999 was just utterly to be the start of the downfall of WCW. And the Starrcade card, about 45-50% of it kind of reflects what was going on in WCW at the time. So now, normally I would, this is where I would pick a match of the evening, for this pay-per-view. And, to me, there were two of them. So there's two matches of the night that I thought were really entertaining when I watched it. One was the hardcore title match with Screaming Norma Smiley and Meng. And the other one, I'm going to have to give it to Jarrett and Dustin Rhodes. That was a really good Bunkhouse Brawl match. Those were the two good matches of the night. Sting and Lex Luger was okay, but I wasn't really entertained as much as I was during the hardcore match and the Bunkhouse Brawl. So, again, guys, I really hope you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/TheWrestleGamer, so you can tweet with me, tweet with me, live chat with me during the shows like Monday Night Raw, Impact, Friday Night SmackDown. So, with that being said, I'm done with me, Billy Boudreaux, saying thank you very much for watching.